Now, Xi Jinping, the China is a bit like shutting down. Confucian way of looking at the world with the East and West were started to get into the jail. And even those ones that just simply and even democratizing the society, that is the way to the Chinese future. Hi, here is Markku Wilenius, your traveling future. Today I'm gonna talk about the future of China. You see, China is now reverting back to the times of Mao. Even if nobody believed this could ever happen, it is happening. Let me explain. Now, Xi Jinping has taken an iron hand on China, Chinese people. He's controlling everything that is taking place in the China in many ways that Mao used to did back in 1950s, 60s and 70s. However, our times, of course, are hugely different to the times of Mao. So we need to be thinking what is actually going on, and let's first take a little bit a tour de force to the history of Chinese politics. Now, we all know that Mao Zedong was the one that started to lead the Communist Party, started to lead the country, became the illustrious leader of China, and kept that way. And by the time he died in the late 70s, the country was more or less in total chaos and pushed back in ways that was almost unimaginable. Now, after Mao came Deng Xiaoping, and he thought that it's a necessity to start to build very different kind of a future for China. So first of all, he thought that no more this personal cult. China traditionally has always been collectively ruled, and so he restored that idea of collective ruling. And he also pressed that there is no more than 2 periods of power for president, each for 5 years, and then needs to come another one. And he personally showed the way, because he then retired after being in 10 years in power, 1989. He also thought that the way for the Chinese future is to release the entrepreneurial potential of the country. So slowly but surely he started to do that. And when we come to the 90s, where obviously there were others who started to rule after him, there was a clear way for China to move forward, raise their standard of living, and becoming a significant part of the global economy and society, as it had been a long time ago, over 250 years ago. Now, this time China started then to show, already back in late 90s, in a global economy in a way that became really significant. The demand for raw materials were huge, but also they supplied the world. The export grew very rapidly throughout the 2000s, and the GDP growth was something quite amazing. On average, something like a 10%. So it was a fast growth, and what it did was that it really concretely raised a lot of Chinese people out of the poverty. And then we come to the year 2012, when Xi Jinping is chosen to be a chairman of the standing committee of the Communist Party. So he becomes the president, and he's also the head of the military. And he proclaimed that he wanted to rejuvenate the Chinese nation. And later he said that he wants to build a Chinese nation invincible. And he comes from the type of the background where his father was a very influential policymaker. So a lot of the steps that he was able to take within the ranks of the Communist Party happened because he was favored because of his father. Not, for instance, because of his merits as a student or his merits as a worker. Now, right after he became to the power, he started to see that his way of looking at the Chinese society is very different. He wanted to, above all, have a control. So it was him who started to press a lot of different type of the controls, and an expression of voices of people started to get shut down. So, and the dissidents were started to get into the jail. And even those ones that just simply uttered the word of dissent into his policies could disappear into his jail. So apparently he started to show the types of behavior that we have also seen in Russia. And this happens when a person gets unlimited power with no checks and balances, and he started to use it for his own purpose. In the case of Xi, what happened was that he really wanted to challenge the United States as a global superpower, and he really wanted to show the Chinese power over the neighborhood. That's why he keeps up raising tensions in the South China Seas, as well as building up a confrontation with Taiwan, and many other examples showing that he sees the primacy of his country in a very different way, actually, what some of his predecessors saw it. They were much more collaborative, and they saw the virtue of collaboration rather than separation and confrontation. Now, a lot of the power that Xi Jinping has in his ranks comes from the fact that he has been able to push away all those people who might disagree with him. You see, in China, there are three different sorts of fractions in the political elite. There is a fraction that thinks a little bit like Xi Jinping, and they are often those extreme leftists. Some of them want to restore to the glory of a Maoist power. Then there is this kind of a middle section, tries to be a bit more liberal. And then there is what can be called, in their context, the right wing, which sees that ultimately liberalizing and even democratizing the society, that is the way to the Chinese future. Now, obviously what we see currently is that the Xi Jinping do not want these other sections to raise their issues, and he wants to control the media space. And everybody in the system has to show a lot of loyalty and appreciation to what he says and thinks, but there is no opposition. Thus, we see some decisions that are dramatically affecting negatively to Chinese society. Like, for instance, this zero COVID policy that came this year after Omicron started to ravage. But we knew that the Omicron is quite harmless actually, and that's why in most of the countries the normal way of running the society has pretty much been going like that. But not so in China. He insisted this policy of zero, meaning that there was a long period in central cities of China which were completely locked down, and that really didn't make much sense. And there were lots of Chinese experts that actually said that this is not the right way, but of course their voices were not heard. But similarly, there is also a lot of dissidence about this aggressive policy that Xi has adopted. That creates currently a lot of tensions in the world and particularly in the Asian region. And the last point was that when Xi wanted to lift this ban of having more than 2 terms for a president, because he said that his project is not over. So China forgot its past in a way, and in this autumn, in the party Congress, they then accepted this new norm that president can prevail after 2 periods. Again, we can see that there is a lot of same signals that comes also from the Russian way of doing things now under Putin's regime. The question and the ultimate question is that what does this mean for the China? Now, China has been really, or has become a really extraordinary important player in the global economy. But now partly for the reasons that actually stems from Xi's policies, the China is a bit like shutting down. Its economic growth is slowing down considerably. There is in the country that has gripped with a lot of fears, the innovation may not be the one that is flourishing in those type of the circumstances. So this traditional Chinese entrepreneurship is suffering because of their leader. The question is, can anything happen with that? We don't know, of course. And but one thing is sure, there is a growing dissonance, because what has happened ever since Mao is that China has been completely rebuilt. Chinese education system, general terms, is good, and it well covers the whole nation and its people. So people are to some extent informed and educated, and they don't probably like to go back to the times where there is a one-man show. However, because of the control systems that Xi has been able to put in place and his own cart that is looking after his personal interest, it is not easy to change the direction. But I do feel that there might be something cooking there right now, and that is because all of these decisions that he has been doing under his term, and in many of those decisions you can actually see that it pushes backward. Because the problem is not only that he's kind of a insistence on control and micromanaging everything, but it's really he's noticed that he actually don't care so much about the economy itself, because he comes from purely political circumstances and he doesn't really understand the economy. And because of that, he's not given sufficient emphasis on kind of a metabolism of the Chinese economy, which is really a pity, because there is a lot of interesting stuff that has been coming up in that country. And in many ways, China has risen to a very important position, to a voice of the Asia in many ways. And of course, it has exerted its influence. And particularly in recent years, this idea of the virtual silk strategy has been very strong, meaning using digitalization as a part of creating impact in the world. But there is a lot of worrisome development there, and that is particularly because it seems like he doesn't have much of the reflection going around him, criticizing him, giving him a proper and unbiased advice as how to move on. Because this is what all the people that hold the power should have. And if that is missing, it means that there are no necessary checks and balances. China, to me also personally, is exciting because I went to visit China when it was still very much coming out of the Putin's era. This was 1983. And I remember walking in the streets of Beijing, where there was mostly bicycles everywhere, very few cars, and some buses, and a lot of busing indeed. And every foreigner, including me, was something really, really exceptional. And we were generally treated very kindly. So let us hope that the China can show its better side to the world, which is entrepreneurship, which is this Confucian way of looking at the world, and bringing balance to the world, bring balance between the south and north, between the east and the west. And China has had a very important role there. So let's hope that positive role will be able to show its impact into the world, where we all are thinking that, well, hopefully one day, together with China, together with Russia, together with the East and West, South and North, we can really tackle the real global problems that we all need to work on. Subscribe to my channel and learn more about the future. I would also like to ask you a question. What do you think personally that is the future of China? How do you see that? And what are the factors that are affecting your view? I really like to hear about them.